I love you too.
I love you.
I love you.
I love you.
Human beings love to be loved. We yearn for it. We want people to like us. But that deep desire to love and be loved can create strong incentives in the brain to act in ways that are not rational, not to our benefit. It happens to you, it happens to me all the time, every day, and it influences our decision making way too much. So what do we do about it? What can we do about that? What can we do about it? What do we do about it? We identify when it's happening and we balance our emotions with objective facts as much as we can. Those are the 3 steps. In this video, we'll go through the identification process. What are the cues to this mental bias? And at the end of this video, I'll show you a few different ways to balance this mental bias. This is Mr. Mind Game, where we study habits and mental models of history's most successful people to train our brains for peace and wealth. Love is blind, love drunk, love stoned. We've all heard these different sayings, but in psychology, it's known as loving tendency bias. Loving tendency bias.
As long as you love me.
And it does not only happen when you love, it happens when you simply like someone or you like something, or an idea or a concept. So it's actually liking loving tendency bias. Liking loving tendency bias is described in Poor Charlie's Almanac by Charliemunger and Peter Kaufman. A person will love those who love them, and they will do things for that person to keep that love flowing between the two of them. We will ignore faults of that person, will comply with whatever they say, regardless of how ridiculous they are, because we want them to like us. And then we will love things that that person loves just solely because they love it. Monkey see, monkey do. If you like that handbag, then I like it too. If you're going to dislike some person, I'm going to dislike them also solely because you dislike them. No other reason. And lastly, what we'll do is distort reality. We'll distort facts about that person or what they think so we keep this love flowing. Why is it so important to understand liking loving tendency bias, you might ask? Well, it is the root cause of other mental biases, so you need to be able to recognize it. The first of which is the halo effect. The halo effect is where you like someone, so you praise each and every one of their qualities, even though they might be objectively bad at something. Think of Regina George in Mean Girls.
The queen bee, the star, those other 2 are just her little workers.
One time, she punched me in the face. It was awesome.
People like her even though she's objectively a terrible friend. The next is in-group bias. If you're in love with a particular group or community, you assign more positive values to that community and its members, and you assign more critical values to the outsiders, whoever not a part of that group.
Man, I hate the Yankees.
Yeah, you are all villains to me because I happen to live in this region of the country.
The political divide between Republicans and Democrats in the United States, that's a perfect example of in-group bias. Especially recently, there's been a huge uptick in very unfavorable opinions of the other political party, which leads us to the next bias, which is anchoring bias, where you like a product or a person, so you focus on the positive attributes and you ignore the negative attributes. This bias is rampant in corporate fraud cases. Enron, Bernie Madoff, and potentially Sam Bankman-Fried, all scenarios where someone's likability, popularity, and apparent success blinded regulators, investors, and employees. They wanted that love, they wanted that money to keep flowing in, so they turned a blind eye to the potential downside. Liking loving tendency bias is getting increasingly worse. From the first TV ad ever, marketing teams were trying to get the consumer, you and me, to like them.
Oh, why don't you love me?
Bulova watches had the world's first television advertisement.
America runs on Bulova time.
Even in that short Bulova ad, they want you to believe that all of America likes Bulova watches, so you should too.
Just do it!
You should spend your hard-earned money on watches because everyone else likes them. I will too. Justifies the purchase. So big business is well aware of the liking, loving tendency bias, which is why they have celebrities market their products. I personally love the Johnny Depp Sauvage commercial.
In the wilderness, fearless and human, Sauvage.
Smell good while I get eaten by a desert wolf. They want the brand recognition of a face that you recognize in hopes that it will sway you to buy their product. And where companies can't differentiate on anything else, let's say their commodity like soap, the least they can do is try to make you like them.
I think she likes me.
If they can't get you a celebrity, they'll try to make you laugh. 86-year-old company Old Spice is facing market share decline because it was associated with grandpas. What did they do? They did this.
Look again. The tickets are now diamond. Anything is possible when your man smells like Old Spice and not a lady. I'm on a horse.
So what happened? By the end of the 2010s, Old Spice became the #1 selling brand of body wash for men in the United States. Now, you might have noticed other brands are following suit. You see more humor in commercials now.
We need to silence our phone. Who knows where that button is?
I don't have silent.
Everyone does, right up here.
Social media has skyrocketed the liking, loving tendency bias phenomenon with influencing. Influencers and their sponsors understand that you like the influencer and you're more likely to buy the sponsor's product regardless of the quality of that product or service. People generally have a lot to do throughout the day, so it's a mental shortcut to make a decision on a product or service to buy it based on someone else liking it.
I think she like me.
You don't have to do the analysis of the quality. Think about when you ask your friend for a reference. You like the influencer likes the lipstick or whatever, so instead of going through the analysis of analyzing the objective qualities of the lipstick, you just jump to liking the lipstick. Same can be true for movies. Did you go to that film because it was a train film, or did you go to it because it was Brad Pitt in the movie? I went because of the latter. And in sales, when you go to the car lot or the department store, you might get questions from the salesperson that are wholly irrelevant to your purchase. Where are you from? What do you do for a living? Do you have any kids or hobbies? Do you go golfing on the weekend? All of those questions are intended to build rapport between you and the salesperson. They want you to like them. The more you like them, the higher likelihood that you make a purchase from them. Like Mad Men's Don Draper in this sales pitch.
But he also talked about a deeper bond with the product.
He's showing deeply personal photos to sell not just his product, not just his service, but to sell himself. The more they know about him, the more they are likely to like him. The more they know him and see him as a person, as their friend, rather than just another salesman in their boardroom. Unfortunately, politics is no different. It is increasingly becoming a popularity contest. You know that, where likability is the key metric toward electability. Likability, loving bias is the reason why you see so many pictures of politicians holding a beer, or with their dog, or with their sleeves rolled up, or with a hard hat on. If you like them, whether that be because of their personality or how they look, or you think they'd like to have a beer with you, or you'd like to have a beer with them, their team knows that you're more likely to vote for them. So why then is liking, loving tendency bias bad? We're not saying that every time someone is nice to you, that they have some ulterior motive. That would be crazy. Where liking, loving tendency bias becomes a problem is where your love or like for someone outweighs your rational decision making. It dominates the decision-making process. Liking, loving tendency bias can turn you into a people pleaser. Here are a few examples. For instance, Cindy and her family have been going to the same hairdresser for the last 10 years. The hairdresser knows the family, he asks questions about how they're doing and what's going on in their lives. The problem is, Cindy's hair, every time she leaves the hairdresser, ends up looking like this. And to compound the issue, the hairdresser keeps moving further and further away from Cindy and her family, extending the drive to get a terrible haircut. This is objectively a bad outcome. And what's the problem? Cindy is subject to the liking, loving tendency bias. She wants to keep the love going between her and her hairdresser because she's her friend.
I love it.
The relationship with her friend is now dominating the decision-making process to get a haircut. And here's a tale as old as time.
Tale as old as time.
Henry and Sally are both in a relationship together, but Henry starts to show outbursts and controlling behavior toward Sally. He puts her down, but she doesn't leave. Why? Maybe Sally does not have the self-worth to believe that she deserves better. Henry might make her feel like he's her only option. Regardless of the other reasons, her decision to stay is in part due to liking, loving tendency bias. Sally is placing more weight on the love or apparent love that Henry gives her than the objectively bad things about their relationship. Remember what we said before, you're going to distort facts with liking, loving tendency. This is Sally distorting facts. If you've seen the movie Ex Machina, Caleb makes a severe loving tendency bias mistake when he was manipulated by the robot Ava to double-cross his boss, Nathan. Caleb was love blind, and that ended up killing both him and his boss. Never trust a robot. Write that down. People pleasing from loving tendency bias can impact career decisions too. Meet Mitch. Mitch really doesn't know what exactly he wants to do with his life. He knows that he's liked music for a very long time, but his dad is a lawyer. Which do you think is more likely? Mitch becomes a musician or becomes a lawyer? He wants his dad to be proud of him, so rather than pursue music, he picks law. He does well, but he has no interest in law, so he wakes up to a career every day that doesn't provide him fulfillment.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
That's too damn bad! Liking, loving tendency biases can cause you to pursue careers that you think other people will respect you for. If you don't know what you like or you're not adamant in your beliefs, we're at risk of pursuing careers that will make us look good or pursue things that other people are doing, what we perceive as popular. Next, liking, loving tendency bias can lead you to make decisions that are dishonest, not true to yourself. For example, up to the 2008 financial crisis, credit rating agencies rated risky bonds as the highest quality, for fear that banks would take their business elsewhere. Watch.
You're convinced the underlying mortgages in these bonds are solid loans?
That is our opinion, yes.
Can you name one time in the past year where you checked the tape and you didn't give the banks the AAA percentage they wanted?
We don't give them the ratings. They'll go to Moody's, right down the block. If we don't work with them, they will go to our competitors. And it is not my decision. I have a boss.
Are you kidding me? What are you for?
This scene demonstrates distorted facts due to liking, loving tendency bias. Woman at the credit rating agency, she knew the value of the bonds were distorted. But her excuse, she wanted to please her boss. She wanted to please the big banks that would take their money elsewhere. They wanted the money to keep rolling in. So they ignored reality. Those bonds were not AAA, and that's what led to the financial collapse of 2008. This happens all the time between the boss-employee relationship. They don't question the boss because of a number of reasons. Maybe they want a promotion. There's also an authority bias going on here. They think the boss is always correct. Or maybe the boss has a CEO complex where because they're the CEO, they believe their opinion must be right. So you risk believing something is true or good solely because someone else thinks it is true or good. But you don't know for sure because you've never analyzed it for yourself. And lastly, we experience the bandwagon effect where we go along with the opinions of other people because they're around us. Those are the same opinions that we hear all the time.
Thirsty.
This happens in mainstream news and social media, where you like certain influencers, you watch certain shows because your friends watch those shows, and you never get the opposing opinion because you're in this echo chamber. It's more comfortable. It causes less friction if you just go along with the opinions of those who are closest to you. This is liking, loving bias. It's the path of least resistance. That's the bandwagon path. Again, if you don't have strong character, if you don't have a strong stance on particular issues and know why you think that way, then you are more likely to regress to the mean and start thinking how everyone else in your community thinks about a particular topic. Not because you believe that, because that's the only stance that you've heard thus far. So what you think is based on your community. Effectively, you become a sheep. You're following the herd. And there is nothing wrong with having the same opinion as other people. That happens on a daily basis, but don't let liking, loving bias be your North Star for thinking a certain way. At least know why you think a certain way and question why you think that way, which transitions us perfectly into how to identify and prevent liking, loving tendency bias. We first need to identify the bias when it happens. How do you identify it? Hallmarks of liking, loving tendency bias are subjective feelings, decision making based on subjective feelings about a person, an idea, or a concept, or a business. That dominates the reasoning for doing something. I'm doing this because Sally's doing this. I'm voting this way because of my family. I'm staying with my significant other because they love me. If you notice that you're getting agitated, mad, frustrated when you talk about the reasoning, it's a sign that your rationale isn't adding up. You can't come up with logical reasoning to justify your actions, so you have broken logic. If you have broken logic, it's a sign that there's emotion involved. And it might be, you guessed it, liking, loving tendency bias. For example, John has an idea for a business that he wants to start that his friend says is just not going to work. John can't come up with reasons why the business idea will work, so he gets angry, trying to rebut what his friend has to say about the idea. John is married to his idea. He loves it unconditionally. Regardless of how many holes you poke into that idea, John's going to hold on to it. He loves it. That is liking, loving tendency bias. So how do you identify it in other people? Same way. Going to get overly offensive language, frustration, objective feelings. They won't be able to pass the 5 why test, is where you ask why upwards of 5 times. If they can't get to a what, how, within those 5 why questions that you ask, they can't close the loop on their logic, or maybe they reference a specific person and they would be subject to liking, loving tendency bias. Okay, so now we know what to look for. How do we trigger our brain to look in the first place? How do we get from here to here?
Hello, Derek. Hello.
If you meditate or you want a recurring reminder, you can use either of these 3 daily affirmations. Number 1, facts over feeling. Say it over and over. Facts over feeling. Number 2 is mindful heart, impartial mind, meaning we're acknowledging the emotion, but it's only one side of the argument. It's only one piece of the puzzle. Number 3, question, love, trust, reason. Similar to the other 2, just a different way of saying it. You can pick any one of these 3. You can incorporate it into your daily meditation if you want. You can say it when you first get up in the morning, write it on a sticky note, whatever you have to do. 3 short affirmations to get it into your brain, so then when you see it happen, you know that you can start implementing ways to avoid it. Okay, so now we've spotted that in this moment, we're falling victim to liking, loving tendency bias. Now what? How do we swim out of it? Strategy number 1. This is Reginald. He's at the car dealership and he loves this new car. And he gets along with the sales guy that he's been talking to, which has been refreshing for him because it's not often that he meets a car salesman that he enjoys. He's excited. He's on the cusp of getting a brand new car and he knows facts over feelings, how to make a good, rational decision. So he takes a step back from the negotiation table. He walks out to give himself some air and thinks, what is bad about this situation? What are the downsides to this deal? Well, car isn't the color he wanted. The MSRP is too high. Nothing's been taken off yet. There's a bunch of extras on the car that he doesn't need. So then he finally comes to his senses and he waits for another deal, one that fits his budget and his desires for a car. So strategy 1 for liking, loving tendency bias is to think about what is bad about a decision. Think from the negative. Strategy 2, Mark and Jessica. They've been looking for a wedding planner. There she is, maybe. Mark has called around and loves a few of the wedding planners that he's talked to. So Jessica steps in to help. And instead of selecting a planner based on feelings, Jessica creates a list of must-haves, nice-to-haves, and avoidances. Elements include price, style, experience, preferences, and more. Strategy number 2 for combating liking, loving tendency is to set decision-making criteria. What will it take for you to move forward with a decision?
Be a go, no go for launch. Booster. Go. Retro. Go.
If that criteria isn't met, and you don't move forward. Number 3, Luke and Tony. They've both been thinking about making a career change. Their friend Ryan really likes real estate and he seems to be doing pretty well. Luke jumps right into it, takes the same job as Ryan. Tony, on the other hand, he takes a little bit longer to make a decision. He starts getting the opinions of other people. So Tony's over here talking to the other real estate professionals. He finds a specific niche of real estate that he wants to be in through speaking with those other people. He loves it. So strategy 3 to avoid loving tendency is to seek other opinions. Strategy number 4, Janet goes to the mall to buy a new dress. The first store she goes into has a beautiful dress that she loves, but it's 5 times the price of what she normally pays for a dress. What does she do? She listens to Mr. Mind Game and she takes her time. She doesn't buy right away. She remembers that she's at the mall after all.
I can make things out of clay and lay by the bay. I just may.
There's plenty of other stores that she can hit. She might even be able to get 3 dresses for the price of 1. So strategy 4 to avoid liking, loving tendency bias is take your time. Time after time. No shotgun decision making. And here is strategy number 5. This is Jake. This is his girlfriend. He loves her. He thinks, but he's not sure of what to do. He imagines that it's not him that's facing this problem. It's his friend. What advice would he give his friend in this situation? Or what advice would his friend give to him? Strategy 5 then is a disinterested party. Think of yourself as a disinterested party. Think that you just float up above yourself and you're seeing it from the third party perspective. What advice would you give yourself in that moment? It's a great way to avoid liking, loving tendency bias. Because you're removing yourself from the situation, therefore you're removing emotion from the decision, hopefully. So to recap, the 5 different ways that you can avoid liking, loving tendency bias are: think about the bad. What are the bad aspects of this decision? Think about decision-making criteria beforehand. If those criteria are not met, you do not make the decision. Number 3, seek opinions from other people, especially people who are disinterested, people who are professionals maybe, people outside of your friend group or your family. Number 4, take your time. Remove yourself from the situation. It can be really emotional to make a decision, especially big ones, so take more time to think about the objectives of the scenario. And number 5, imagine yourself as a disinterested third party. Avoid emotions within that decision. These 5 things will help you prevent making an irrational choice.
Bingo.
Now, why do you need to be concerned about liking, loving tendency bias for your own pursuits? We've already demonstrated how powerful liking, loving tendency can be on people's decision making. If people like you, they're more likely to help you. If people like you, they're more likely to help you.
I think she likes you.
They're less likely not help you. And this is not me telling you to go out into the world and be a fake person. That's not what I'm saying. But this is me telling you that when you meet people, the perception you give off, your first impression that you give, are all all severely important. You'd be best suited to make people as comfortable with you as possible if you want them to eventually help you in the future. All of these popular memes about being an introvert, not wanting to see people, thinking it's funny or popular to be an outcast or unliked, that's all garbage. If you want to be successful in professional or your personal life, don't listen to any of that stuff. If people like you, if they know what your interests are, and they're more likely to bring you up to other people, even when you're not there. How do you become likable? Listening, connection, and commonalities. Anything to get you to be placed into the same group as the person you're talking to. Find out what they like. Maybe you'll share something in common. The way I keep conversation going is by making it as easy as possible on the other person. I don't want them to have to pry me about things, and I want them to tell me as much about them as they want to. I want to listen. Another trick is that I remind myself to love the other person I'm talking to. Not in the intimate partner sense, of course, but what this does is it reminds me to pay attention to what they have to say. If I love them, and I'm going to listen to them. It makes you a better listener. So I hope you see how liking loving tendency is so important to both avoid and to take advantage of, and how it can change the trajectory of your life. Tell me what you think. Where have you been a victim of liking loving tendency bias? Let me know in the comments. Or even better, write a summary of what we talked about today, and you're more able to remember it. This is Mr. Mind Game, where we study habits and mental models of history's most successful people to train our brains for peace and wealth. Share this with someone you think it could help.